and welcome back, everybody. This is Foundation Feed Series number 6. Thank you for joining us here at the Michael J. Rinder Aftermath Foundation YouTube channel, where we discuss all things Foundation related in terms of stories, programs, updates, and all the good things. I am the volunteer board member president of the Foundation, and I'm joined by Phil, our executive director. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you, Claire. It's nice to be back again to
Yeah.
our part 2. I'm looking forward to this one, actually. This is our first Aftermath broadcast cliffhanger.
Yes,
Katherine
right?
had just escaped. What's going to happen now?
Yes. And so for anyone newly here this week, of course, we are talking about our conversation last week with John Christiansen, who is the one that connected Katherine with the foundation. And thus we went through the elaborate collaboration of helping break her free after 29 years. And so if you have not watched part 1, just don't watch this yet. We've included the link to part 1 in the video description. But for context, it's an important part of the story. With all that said, we'd love to welcome John for part 2. Welcome, John.
Hello.
Hey, John.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
You disappeared for a second, so I was confused.
Oh.
Okay. Hello.
Maybe that was my superpowers.
Wow.
We all disappeared, or just me?
Just you, Claire.
Oh, wow. There you go. Oh, whoops.
Oh.
There we go.
You just disappeared for a second. I accidentally hit the remove button.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's launch into this. So, John, thank you again for your willingness to share your very important role in this entire story with Katherine. You were an amazing person to collaborate with and still are. So, picking up where we left off yesterday. Yeah, of course. No, absolutely. Phil, would you like to go first?
Well, yeah, John, you had covered right up to, I guess, the point where Katherine had gotten out. We were kind of getting a little bit of what was going on during that time, how you felt about it, what kind of possible issues or danger she might be in at the time from Scientology. So I guess at this point, it's like once she was kind of getting out, were there any things that might have come up, any surprises, anything that wasn't expected when she was actually getting in a position to actually leave Scientology, get on a plane and go?
Well, yeah, she she went, as Claire will probably remember about as vividly as I. She went dark for I think about 3 hours.
And this was on the day of. Yes, this is absolutely why I wanted this exact thing is why I wanted to deep dive on this in part 2, because yes, John, I remember. So I think, so we were talking because it was a Friday, June 11th, 2021, to be specific. As you do, John, I remember that day incredibly well. And I think it was Wednesday or Thursday before that when I had texted Katherine the boarding pass for her flight to come to Denver, which is where she had chosen to come, which of course we were perfectly supportive of, because yay, Colorado, Scientology is a dust mote in or a mosquito in a sea of wonderful people here. So very, very minimal presence, in other words. And yes, I think the first, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first time I ever spoke, or maybe the second time I spoke to you on the phone, was that morning.
That was, it was either the first or the second, but yeah, it was, well, let me, it was the first time we'd spoken. You and I had spoken. And I remember that because, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I remember that because we had been texting, texting back and forth. And I remember there was also a point of where you and I were starting to panic for some other reason we hadn't heard from her, and it was because we had misunderstood the differences, and we hadn't taken the time zones into consideration.
Yes, but I think this is a good, yeah, no, for sure. The part that I most remember about that morning is that, of course, we were definitely in panic mode, and at that point, we were starting to go, well, what are we going to do if we don't hear from her?
And
because at that point, yeah, go ahead.
How far ahead of the flight was this 3-hour silence? Like, was it really close to the flight? Or?
Yeah, it was the same day for sure. And
I was going to look it up, and I still can actually.
Okay. Well, while you look at that, I'll just outline. So essentially, it was a morning, and then so Friday morning, and I think her flight was going to be like at 2 or 3 in the afternoon ballpark, because she was getting into Denver around 5:30 or 6 p.m. It was a nonstop flight because, again, we're very well aware of Scientology's capacity to interfere with travel arrangements, and we've have many instances where they have intercepted people where there's a layover. But it was close enough that it was within hours, and the panic that set in at that moment was Katherine had told both John and I that she absolutely, one of her worst fears was being intercepted and then taken to Los Angeles, California against her wishes. Right, John?
Yeah. I remember that.
So then we were going, well, wait, if she were intercepted, then for all intents and purposes, to our personal knowledge, she would have been being kidnapped. And so at that point, we started to go, wait a minute, we need to have law enforcement on backup here, just in case, knowing that Katherine at that point just wanted to get out without creating any stir. But John, I remember talking to you on the phone and saying, okay, and I'd love to hear your memory of this too, because I thought, man, this gentleman probably thinks I am off my rocker.
I never did.
Well, I know, but I have vivid memories of this. So I said, so listen, if she doesn't come back on the radar within the next hour or two, we are going to need to bring in some law enforcement contacts. Yeah. And then I said to you, and you were like, okay. And I said, but if it comes to that, I need you to not mention the foundation. And you were like, wait, what? But then I explained that if that were the scenario that was happening, so you were an independent party that had never had any involvement in Scientology. And my concern was protecting Katherine in the event that was the scenario, because I knew that consequences for her in that scenario would be far, far worse if the Aftermath Foundation were mentioned.
Yeah, and I never thought you were off your rocker. I did wonder why, but I had seen enough of you on videos on YouTube, on podcasts, on Chris Shelton's show, things like that. I had seen enough of you, and I knew enough about the foundation by that point to trust in the process and to trust in you as an individual, because I had seen interviews with you.
Yeah.
And I knew to trust in that. I didn't think that this was some kind of sham that I had somehow fallen into, or led us into.
You know, for a lot of people, though, it's unreal to just the lengths that Scientology will go to in trying to keep people from leaving, and up to physically restraining them, which has been done in many cases.
And that would have surprised me if they did not do that. Yeah. That would have surprised me if somebody would have said, oh, they're not likely to do that. But Claire had quite a bit of credibility with me, even though we had just started talking. I had already kind of known her before that, in a way. So that was fine. I did not understand at first why am I the one contacting the FBI if this happens?
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't it be the foundation? And you explained it to me. And part of that was on text. And then by the time we got onto a vocal phone call that day, which was our first together, and that's why I don't have a transcript of it.
Yeah.
But so we were talking about that, and you explained it to me in a way that made a lot of sense. And it didn't take any convincing. You just simply told me what made sense. Because the foundation would be vulnerable, and because the foundation and things would be worse for her if the foundation.
Yeah, it was more my concern for Katherine if it were disclosed that she was in contact with, a suppressive organization from Scientology's standpoint
versus just one
individual
one stupid wog out there.
No.
Oh, no.
I'm not saying that's your opinion. I'm just saying.
No, but versus an innocent person in your case that had nothing, no negative connections. Again, this is all, of course, bogus from Scientology's standpoint, but I was just trying to hope to. I'm a thinker and a problem solver. Like, try to poke at things from all angles as to how to best approach it for the best outcome for all involved, no matter what the scenario is.
Yeah. So what was the ultimate reason? Why was there silence for that 3 hours?
I don't remember the exact reason.
I think that she had gone in. She was supposed to. I think she was actually even supposed to go in session for a counseling session that morning, if I'm not mistaken. But she was claiming that she was, or not even claiming, it was true. She hadn't slept leading up to this. So, but therefore, that was kind of like the period where she would go in and be in the organization. And then she was going to be taken to where they were staying at the apartments. This was in Columbus, Ohio. And we actually had a volunteer on, like, ready to pick her up and at an exact time. So this was in the hours leading up to that. So it wasn't that, anything was not following exactly per the schedule. I think, again, John, feel free to chime in, but we just weren't exactly tracking on when we would hear from her at what time. So then panic started to prematurely creep in.
Yeah, and we just hadn't heard from her in a while. I think she was, like you were saying, she was being very judicious about when to be on. And I apologize to everybody if I don't remember this perfectly well. I would imagine Catherine's probably going to chime in. She might already be doing that.
When you did hear from her next, was it by text or by phone? And
it was through another party in the foundation, and then Claire, I have it right here, says just had contact.
Yes.
And it was June 11, 2021 at 10:08, which was.
Here we go. Let me pop this up. Hold on.
I was on East Coast.
So that's only like 3 or 4 hours before the flight leaves.
That's right.
I was on East Coast time at that. Oh yeah, so was she though.
Yes. Yeah. So Katherine said, took my SIM card out and hid it, and hid my iPod and my phone. So yeah. So that was from our perspective, it was it was a day that was very, had to go exactly as planned. And there were many things that could have gone wrong. Anyway, and again, we'll link to Katherine's interview too, that Mark and I did with her a couple of years ago, where we went through all the details, because even when the volunteer met her at the apartment complex, I remember Katherine talking about how there were some Sea Org members coming that, she had to duck down in the car, and she was like, anyway, it's crazy, right, John?
It was quite, I would normally have been asleep at that time, but there was no way that was going to happen.
Yes.
And we even had to, there's a part here's a text from you. Say, good morning. Just thought I'd check and see if you were able to agree on a code text. And I think that was worth mentioning in here, just to have a bag of tricks. Yeah. have solutions ready and plan for what if this goes wrong, what if that goes wrong, what if something goes wrong that I can't anticipate at all. And this was one of those. And you had asked if we were able to, if she and I had been able to agree on a code text.
Yeah, and again, to go to those extremes to escape from a cult, and just why you have to go to those extremes to escape from a cult like that, because Scientology will do a lot of things to prevent that. And it's just not an easy thing, especially if you're in the Sea organization like Katherine was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the year that preceded this, we had a code text already established. I'll just tell you what it is, because it doesn't matter now. Every time we had to abruptly end the conversation, we would just type 3 periods. Or every time we were back from the conversation, we would type 3 periods, so that it would seem like something that was just put into the text feed by mistake or something, not "Hi, I'm back," or some kind of code. You could have a code word, but we just had three periods, an ellipsis. And so whenever she would just disappear, which happened quite a bit, like if she was talking to me and then somebody approached her, she could just type in ... Yeah. And then I would know to just not say a thing, not send another text saying, "Where are you? Where did you go?" Or can you hear me? Is this thing on? So
is somebody listening? Are you not allowed to talk to me? Things that had it fallen into the wrong hands and been seen, it was, it makes sense. So ... is
and so
benign, so to speak,
Yeah. Well, Scientology has its own spy organization. So you kind of have to play in that world to a degree in order to beat their tactics.
And make no mistake, we knew that if there was a mistake, or if they did decide to really look into what she was doing, we wouldn't be able to hide it. We knew that. But this was just, okay, this is the best we can do on the surface. So we had the 3 dots. And then when you were asking me, Claire, about the code text, at that point, we had already agreed on 3 exclamation points. 3 exclamation points already meant something bad has happened. Do not text again, but take emergency measures. And we didn't know what those would be, but your invitation to me to contact the FBI would have been a perfect example of that.
Yes.
And I think it's also important to mention that, and you may not be able to get this. You remember last week I'd been talking about it was really hard to get a straight answer out of her. Do you want to leave? Yes or no? Well, I this and I that and I these and I those. Or the chess match, as I was saying. It was hard to get a yes or no, but I actually did. And it was on text. Please, I just need a yes or no. And she said, yes. And so I was able to use that when I contacted the foundation to give them a more substantial email instead of just, I have a friend here who's anonymous and I swear I'm telling the truth. Anyway, the reason I'm saying that is because that you, Claire, had cited that agreement that was in writing, and had said, because now we can, if we tell the FBI, if the FBI says, do you want to leave on your own free will? We have evidence that she does.
Yes.
We have evidence in a contemporaneous private conversation that was not under the influence of anybody saying, are you sure you want to leave? So we have that. And so that the FBI could hopefully use that to say there was a point where she was being asked, without the influence of the oppressive party, that she does want to leave.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and because we knew that in the thinking through the worst case scenario, if she was presented with handlers, she would not be in a position where she could comfortably say what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank goodness that didn't happen.
Really? You know, John, you
There are
always seem
lots of ways that we got really lucky.
John, you
Yes.
always seem so calm about this, but I in looking from an external viewpoint, it seems like a pretty traumatic situation, the whole thing, this whole process.
I had a full head of hair when we started. That's a lot.
I understand. I understand now.
I had no gray hair. And I was 180 pounds and 6 feet 4.
So that's what happens when you don't express. It goes, maybe I losing a bit myself.
But yeah, no, and it is funny thinking back on that day, John, and where and again, I'd love to hear from your perspective, but I remember like where I was standing, the color of the sky, exactly where I was located, complete, in detail graphic memory of that time and that feeling of panic and like, oh my gosh, we cannot fail Katherine in this instance, knowing that she has made a decision, because of course the purpose of the foundation is not to change somebody's mind, but when they've made up their mind that they want out, it's our complete goal and approach to ensure that they make it safely out at their wishes and land safely in the outside world.
Yeah, and that's important too. That last part is particularly important because that was one of the reasons she was so afraid of what the foundation might be. She said, well, they're just going to try to convert me. And I said, I don't know. First of all, I don't know why they would do that. Second of all, I've never seen any evidence on everything I've seen about them or about it that would happen. I don't know why they would have a motivation to do that, especially if you have already decided you want to leave. Right. So, well, but then her position, I guess, was, well, I still want to do Scientology, but I want to not be a Sea Org. I want to get out, but I want to do it on my own because some people have been successful with that. And I just say they're not trying to persuade you. It's the Aftermath Foundation, not the During Math Foundation.
Right.
And
or the Believe or Don't Believe Foundation,
Right.
Yeah, it's for assistance. And I think that's incredibly important to know and to retain.
Yeah.
It's not about converting people. And when you're speaking to them, it's not necessarily about converting them. It's about showing them what's here and showing them, casting a light on what's going on with them, maybe changing their perception of it. But
yeah, and I think that
not
speaks a
conversion.
great deal to the power of labels that Scientology wields over members to keep them in. Like, the big bad suppressive person label or the you're an enemy label and what that means and all the intricate levels of deep, dark programming to make you think you cannot have a critical thought. That means you've done bad things. And the bottom line is those are all mechanics that in the mind of a Scientologist only serve to keep them in and make the world outside a very dark and dangerous place.
Yeah, and part of the reason they want to keep people in, it's partly they like the free labor, but it's also they don't want to have another enemy on the outside.
Right.
Somebody who might criticize and just add to the whole mix of people out there, just exposing their crimes and their abuses.
Yeah.
Which showcases how crappy it all is.
Right.
Because if they can't withstand any scrutiny, if they can't withstand any questioning, then that's a great indication that it's a sham.
And that's almost an absolute, what you're saying right there. Even when you're in, any kind of criticism is frowned upon. And even if it's not something that's such an extreme criticism that you would be considered a suppressive person, you'd still be made to either go into an auditing session and have your crimes, whatever you have to, it's interrogation, or you might have to sit there and write up all your harmful acts of any kind, to any degree. I mean, just any kind of criticism at all, Scientology cannot tolerate.
Yep, absolutely. John, can you share one moment when it really hit you? My gosh, she's actually going to make it out.
Yeah, when she texted me and said, it was in layers, as many things are for me, but it was, I remember the phrase, "Oh my God, John, this is real." And she was on her way to the airport, and that's how I felt at the time. Wow, this is really happening.
Wow.
And it feels
after weird. a year, or more than a year of you working back and forth, communicating, incredible.
Yeah, and for me, it was actually the fact that it was happening that soon.
Yeah.
For me, I was going, I have no idea how long this will take. I don't even know if I will succeed. That actually reminds me of another really important thing. You were talking about earlier, Claire. We cannot fail, that kind of thing. And for me, it was that mindset. There's the contradiction. There's always that mindset of thinking, we cannot fail. I cannot fail. We cannot fail. But at the same time, you have to be able to accept that it might not be in your control at all. You might lose. It might be the control of it might be taken out of your hands. And if it is, I don't know what to say, but it's an interesting, the simultaneity for me of saying, I cannot fail, but what if I do? But I cannot.
But the amazing thing about it is you consider it to be a short amount of time, just over a year. But in the world of Scientology, the fact that you were able to go that long without getting caught, without it being revealed, or them somehow stomping on it, is amazing to me.
Well, that's Katherine deserves the credit for that, because
completely.
She's the I had really very little control over it. All she had to do is leave her phone out one time. And in fact, I'm sorry to say it, she did one time, and she almost got caught, but she outwitted the person who was asking her questions. Who are you talking to? And this was early on. Oh, it's just somebody from high school, even though we never knew each other while I was in high school. But it was so. And then she said it's a person from high school. And if that person had put it together that, and there was some kind of thing that the person that I had said to her, and she had asked, she said that was from, Katherine said to whoever this was, that was from a long time ago. That was from way back when. And if this person had put it together that, okay, back in high school, when Katherine was in high school, there was no email. So you couldn't have been emailing him in high school, but she didn't put that together. And Katherine was smart enough to divert her attention from it, I think is how it worked. Katherine,
in Scientology, that's referred to as that person failed to pull the string. Yeah. Katherine would agree with that.
Sounds like I thought of it as even though the terminology isn't completely right, I just thought of it as her handling her handler. And so there was one time when there was a slip
handling her handler. Yeah, that's a good one too.
If she had been confronted by anybody who was a little sharper or a little less friendly to her.
Yep.
Or a little
here, Katherine commented about this. Let me put it up. She says it was the ethics officer.
Wow. Okay, so never mind.
I'm curious to know how old the ethics officer was, because if the ethics officer was fairly young, and often they are nowadays,
yes,
they might not have had the concept of pre-email Or actually, if they're in the Sea Org, maybe they just don't have any real good concept of email anyway.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I didn't think of that, but
they don't have access to the internet.
What would there have been before email? That's like what was there before breathing?
Well, in the Sea Org, though, they had what was referred to as the Merc system, Mercury. It was an internal. It was basically a standalone email system, but only for within the Sea organization.
Well, that's another thing I was thinking of mentioning is technically it wasn't before email, because it depends on how you're defining email, but it was certainly before email was widespread. I didn't start using email until 1995, and I don't know about others, but for people who hadn't even been born at that time.
Yep.
And especially, it didn't even occur to me what you said about if they have the level of isolation they do in the Sea Org, they may not have that acute awareness of
just even any
how
of the
pervasive or not email would have been at that time.
Yeah, a lot of Sea Org members don't have access to it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember when I was thinking through my days leading up to my escape, which was I escaped January 24th, 2005. And I distinctly remember that the only way I had to reach Mark was an email address. And I had never used email. So I had, in my mental gymnastics to try and figure out how to make a successful escape, I had, at one point, my plan was I will go to these internet cafe and send an email to Mark, and hopefully he will appear and rescue me. It was
on
like
the interwebs.
Yeah, no, and I say it like that, but it's also was really true that was my perspective of it. It was completely foreign, like this, I will go, like the beam me up Scotty kind of, that level of foreign to me.
And you don't even have to be in the Sea Org. I remember when my dad was trying to educate me about how to use a debit card. And it's because it was new to him.
Yes.
Said, Dad, I'm 31 years old. I know what a debit card is. Yeah, it comes straight out of your checking account. Is that so? Thanks, Dad.
And you don't have to have dollar bills with you. Isn't that magical?
I know. You don't have to
To a
call
degree,
and make an
to a
appointment.
degree, then Scientology's keeping people isolated and away from the technology was also a little bit of their downfall in this, that they didn't have the background knowledge to be able to observe and see what was going on with Catherine's outside communication. So there was a little bit of Scientology sort of shooting themselves in the foot on this a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, and I bet that the hammer came right down on June 12th.
Yeah, for those people who didn't spot it, who were in that area. You're right. There would be punishments. And
I know, I remember from my conversations with Katherine that first and second day that she was really worried about that.
Yeah.
And I understand completely.
Yeah.
Well, but you're talking about punishment, and I was kind of talking about that, but I'm also talking about more generally restrictions, which can be punishments, of course, but I'm talking about like, all right, we don't communicate this way now. We don't communicate that way now. And nobody goes out on their own anymore.
Yeah. And everybody has to turn in their
phones. You go
phones.
to the bathroom, you need to have 5 chaperones watching you do it.
Yeah.
That, or maybe not that gross, but anything where I just imagined a lot of restrictions would suddenly come into play. Now, whether they remained is another.
Would they have sent security around to the berthings to search people's rooms for phones at that point?
Yes, very likely. I mean, again, it depends on the level of the organization, but that would absolutely have been the approach. For example, at the imp base, absolutely make sure no one has any personal phones. Look for this, confiscate this, 100%. So, yeah, for sure.
And June 12th also was in this kind of vein of aftermath for the cult. Was that's the day that we started receiving calls from Mike from Columbus. And I don't remember if you received one or not, Claire. I know
I did.
Katherine did it, and I did, and it was after Katherine was out, and that was a rather scary thing to see on my phone, because it just said somebody was calling from Columbus, and I almost answered it, and then I realized, wait a minute, I only know one person who's in Columbus, and she's not in it anymore, and she should never be there again. And so I knew it was somebody from Scientology calling.
Yep. Yeah, we all got phone calls from Columbus, Ohio. So they absolutely, had the so-called blow drill going to track down where Katherine had escaped to. And we pretty quickly were able to establish that there was a program that she was using, I think, in the organization. And Katherine, feel free to correct me in the chat if I'm wrong about this. But I remember we figured out that there must have been some place where they had found at least a trail of who she had been in contact with, because 201, we all received phone calls from a number in Columbus, Ohio to track her down. And you're right, John, it's of course, Katherine and I both, for us, that was par for the course. That's what they do. But it's interesting to hear your perspective of just how terrifying that is actually in real world standards.
Yeah, and it's something to be cautious of as well in another way, because if you already have contacts wherever this is coming from, if this happens to you and you already have contacts where that call is coming from, be wary of that too, because even before Katherine had ever contacted me, I had gone to Ohio University 20 years earlier, or about 20 years earlier. And so I still have a few people who I know in Ohio. And so there was also the idea that, well, it could be from them, but they wouldn't just call me on the fly.
Yeah. When it comes to Scientology, there are no coincidences. That's my stance.
and they're willing to call everybody for any situation. Some years ago when we were doing the billboards, they were calling all our relatives and friends just to get us to stop, and calling up and say, does Phil have a history of anger? And so they called my wife's twin brother's ex-wife in Winnipeg once to ask that. I mean, just bizarre, just anybody and everybody they were calling just to put the bad word
crazy out. So Katherine, thank you for providing this in the chat. For context, I was able to log into a texting program from an org computer, and I had texted the foundation and John from there a few times. I thought that if I logged off, deleted my history, etc., I would be safe. So yeah, that's but again, it shows the levels they go to track down information to intercept people and prevent them from leaving, really. Anyway, crazy. I'm so grateful that Katherine succeeded and was so brave, and it all worked out. But John, let me ask you, so what did this experience teach you about the process of helping someone escape from Scientology?
Just like the last few days of it, or the whole process itself?
Any and all, whatever you would like to share about it from your perspective.
Well, they have to want to leave.
Yeah.
That's of pivotal importance. They have to want to leave. And I think I said to you earlier, it's all carrot and no stick. You cannot pressure them into it.
Yeah.
And not that I tried. I mean, not that I tried to pressure her into it, because if I did, I don't think any of this right now would be happening.
Agreed.
But you cannot pressure them. It must be done patiently. You have to be willing to invest an unforeseeable amount of time. It cannot be rushed. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I shouldn't say that completely, because toward the end, I did have to accelerate things. But the process of earning trust cannot be rushed.
Right.
Just like in any human situation, the process of earning true trust cannot be rushed, and it cannot be done by coercion or pressure.
So kind of like the opposite of Scientology.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely.
Well, and because if you go into this attacking the person, well, that's a guarantee that it's not going to work.
Yeah.
If you go in attacking the cult, that's an absolute guarantee that it's not going to work, and a probable guarantee, a near guarantee, that you're going to put them in there longer, because you're going to convince them that, why would I go with this jerk? Why would I go with this jerk? They're attacking everything I believe in. They're attacking me and everything I believe in. And so if you go in with a combative mentality and an urgency that this must be done, they got to get out of there now, that's not going to work, and it's likely going to backfire. And it might make you feel really good. It might make you feel really good and really smart, being able to say, well, hey, I see the real truth. But remember that that's part of the reason most of the people, maybe not most, but a lot of people got into this in the first place, is because they believed, well, I see the real truth. Everybody else doesn't know what they're talking about.
True.
So it has to be done gently. And it has to be, I don't doubt that one of the most important elements is love, but I think almost everybody's going to come into it with that.
Yeah. It makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. Gentleness and patience as well. And
I
that
think
can be really hard.
I must have been an outlier, because the thing that got us out was one sentence from Jason Begay on that video where he said, show me a clear. And that was all it took, because then I realized after 40 years, I go, wait a minute, I've never met a clear with any of the promised abilities.
But were they speaking to you targetedly?
No, it was on a video.
Yeah, if that had been a person talking to you, if one of your loved ones had come to you, especially if they had come to you and said to you, show me a clear, I wonder if that would have had the same.
You might be right. Yeah, you might be right. I
agree with you, John. It's depending on the approach. If you raise the defenses,
you might be right on that. I have no idea, because that's not how it happened. But you might be right. But for me, it was like almost an instant thing at that point. But then again, we weren't in the Sea Org.
On you?
What's that?
Was there pressure on you from any source other than Scientology? Was there somebody saying to you, you should get out, or don't you want to get out?
No, we had none of that really at all.
I think that might be part of it.
Yeah.
Because you approached it on your own from a point of relaxation, and there was no other person on you to defend yourself against.
Plus, we weren't that heavily in like some. Like we were not in the Sea Org. We did a short stint on staff in the early 70s. We didn't really go on course or get auditing for like 25 years. We were just Scientologists in our head and with the group, and then so we weren't really hardcore Scientologists. So we weren't getting that constant conditioning going on. So we were kind of living our lives a little bit more than some. So we were probably a little more open to it anyway. But somebody in the Sea Org, I can see that being a really difficult, I was going to say bridge to cross, but wrong terminology there.
Yeah, the path out.
I would embrace the irony.
Yeah, path out. There we go.
The parallel terminology.
Yes, for sure. So, John, for people watching who might know someone still trapped inside, what advice would you give on how to help safely?
help to somebody who is already somebody
To,
who is
for
in
people watching
themselves?
who may have loved ones or friends or family still inside, what advice would you give on how the people watching could help their loved ones safely?
Oh,
In
that's really hard for me to know because it's I was in a pretty unusual situation.
yeah.
I guess it depends on if you already have contact with them. Is this
Yeah.
presuming they already have contact with them?
Yeah, that brings up a really good point too, because many times when we have people reaching out to the foundation asking, we always encourage them to maintain a safe contact, make them, like don't attack them, but make it so that they're a resource should that person reach that breaking point of wanting to get out. So that they do have contact with the outside world, and encourage that, and encourage them, if possible, to come spend time with them and create good memories. Those kinds of things is generally how we approach that type of scenario. I was just curious if you had any other thoughts on that.
I'd also ask what you mean by safely. Do you mean so that they don't get swallowed up, or I guess that there's not much else.
Just to not cause situations like you're referring to, where they end up getting trapped deeper in.
So basically, you're saying that just if you're on the outside and you know somebody in, make sure that the person that's inside knows that they have a safe place to go to.
Yeah.
I
If they
think
want to
I
get
would.
out. Yeah, that makes a
I
lot of
think
sense.
I think I would say, make it clear that I love you and I want what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you ever feel like venting about anything, you can vent to me, or if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm there. And I would say, don't even mention it. I would say, don't even contrast that with any other part of their life. Don't say, well, as opposed to an auditor who's not going to understand, something like that. But just say, hey, just in a vacuum, under any circumstances, I'm here for you, and I want to know what you think.
Yeah.
Not what you think you're supposed to think. I
Right.
want to know what you think.
And that's huge right there. You hit the nail on the head with not what you think, not what you're supposed to think. Because very often, I think it's the path of least resistance, quote unquote, that results in members of the C organization just staying where they are and not having the courage or not even the courage, just,
Inertia.
inertia, exactly. And the inability to conceive that there's a life outside of that world because they're so thoroughly and firmly entrenched in it.
Yeah, and some more than others too, and that's something you could hopefully get a feel for. But in addition to what I had just mentioned, I think that I would also say, just ask questions. Keep the statements and the proclamations to a minimum, and be judicious with everything you ask and everything you say, and everything. If you do make a proclamation, make sure that it is not attacking the cult or the person. It's like, well, they kept you there, or you were forced to work 48 hours straight. I really feel bad for you. I really wish that hadn't happened. And I would be very angry if my employer made me do that.
Right.
Or my employer made me work 16 hours in a stretch once, and it was outrageous. I couldn't believe they did that. Then I found out they did this was illegal or whatever. But I would say probably keep the opinions to a minimum unless you are directly asked, and even then be very judicious about it. But it's so much more, I think it's so much more about questions. And I don't mean questions in the pseudo-Socratean method of saying, don't you think this is bad?
Right.
Or I just mean that like if they say, well, they made me work, I had to work 48 hours straight. Oh, why did you have to do that? Because I was bad, or, or because I did something wrong and I got in trouble. So, oh, well, why would making you work to that point of exhaustion, why would that make things better for them or for you?
Right.
And then they have to, in order to answer the question to somebody who is ignorant or even is feigning ignorance, they have to think of what the answer actually is. And sometimes they can't square it. Sometimes they can't bring themselves to believe that. And then they have to say, I don't know. And when you hear those things, I'm not sure how that works, or that's really inconsistent with my employer's policy. They have all these wonderful policies, but they seem to not follow them. Well, really? Why not?
Right. Yep.
Why don't they do it? I don't know. What? Oh, okay. To hear those I don't knows is really important, I think.
Yes. Yes, because it means that there's a crack forming, and it opens the door to getting the person to think for themselves, which ironically is what Scientology tells their members to do, but doesn't actually want them to do.
Right. And I think that once that little crack is opened, the resistance to further cracks diminishes with time, unless something weird happens, unless they get caught, or unless something traumatic happens to them from the inside, like their phone is taken away. Actually, that actually made it worse. But or like you say something, like you cross a line and you lose your discipline and say, you've told me over and over again how they're working you to the bone, and I'm just saying this is inhumane, and they ought to be just brought up to the Department of Labor and just snuffed out of existence. If you lose that discipline, then you're going to lose everything you accomplished up to then, and probably then some.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Yep.
Interesting. Wow. Well, a lot of that makes sense. Totally. I agree with you. I think that you have to kind of keep it open that way. So after all of that, and you look back, what do you think stands out the most for, during Katherine's journey out from over the whole year, over a year, and then the actual escape? What kind of stands out most, do you think?
What stands out most? I guess the attention that I have wanted to pay to the differences in consciousness. And that sounds kind of cryptic, but what I mean by that is, after she blew, her entire reality had been completely changed. And so she was in a very strange mental state, which is exactly what I expected. I just didn't know how it would manifest. And so, and there were things that she was forgetting, things that would be, there were things that she was forgetting, and things that she would be very stressed out about that seemed strange to me. But once I said, oh, well, if she's had this kind of mindset for a generation and suddenly it's not there anymore, then even if it's good, whether it's good or bad, she doesn't have that to go back on. Or she doesn't know how to deal with something that is out in this world. But there are also other changes in consciousness, she's to this day, she's grateful for some of the little things, like, oh, I get to take a nap if I want to take a nap. I get to just go wherever I want to go. And things that a lot of us would never even think of. But
there are no naps in the Sea Org.
Huh?
Claire, there's no naps in the Sea Org ever.
No naps ever, unless you're in isolation for being sick. And even then it's very hard to take a nap because it smells so disgustingly dirty and like CalMag and the drink and vitamins and yuck.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
well, but the
I
other
get it
thing
with
that,
Katherine being in that mindset, because you basically at this point, she's had everything she's lived with up to that point is kind of torn away. So there's, I can totally understand that the whole, it's got to be a settling a little bit on the mindset.
yeah, and there would be things that she would get upset about that I would not see coming at all. And I just have to answer, why does this bother you so much? And to get to the root of it. Well, I guess I was just in the habit of thinking for so long, this and this and that. And then we'd try to undo that. But I think it's really important to mention also, because this really stood out to me. It was really scary, is what happened after she blew. I mean, other things that happened after she blew. All this, what I was saying was true. But I had wondered before she had blown, I wonder if she's going to be susceptible to the draw of any other cults that might, because a predator can smell fear, or a predator can smell its prey. And when you get out of something like that, how much more vulnerable could you possibly be? And so when she was, and so the first few months, she was receiving a lot of pressure from one particular relative of hers that was loading her up, who had already bought into all sorts of conspiracy theories on his own, and was just loading her, packing her to the pores with all this conspiratological horror. And she was terrified, and she didn't, and because her reality had just been yanked out from her, because she had her foundation of what to believe, what reality is, what is real and what is not, that wasn't there anymore. Something she'd been so sure of for 27 or 29 years. Now she's being told this other thing by another person who said, no, this is really the reality. And she didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
And it was, and the conspiracy theories that this person was unloading on her were just horrifying. And they're to me, they were completely ridiculous. They were completely, and they had no evidence at all to back them up. They had only the same sensationalist kind of video and emotionally triggering BS that I would expect from any con person or any cult, even though this person wasn't really wrapped up in a particular cult. But it was really, the reason I mention all this is because it was really scary, because this was harder, from my point of view, this was harder than getting into her to understand what Scientology was doing. At least at first. It was harder because she had no foundation. She didn't know what to believe.
Right.
And it was being told to her by a family member, not just people who had been.
It's not the kind of thing you want right after leaving a cult and leaving everything behind, is to get kind of all that messy stuff,
Yeah. You need time to process, time to heal, time to really process
take walks and have naps.
There you go. Yes.
That's part of what this was meant to be, because Claire, you'll know what I'm talking about. This is when she went to Minnesota for her cousin's wedding, and she met a lot of relatives there. Some she hadn't seen since she was a kid.
Yes.
And so, and she spent, I think it was about 6 weeks out there.
Yep.
But what began there was this unloading from a particular relative of all these horrid conspiracy theories. and it lasted after she had left there. So, and luckily that there were some things that were able to be said that got her out of that. It's not like she particularly believed in these things, but she kept asking me, or saying to me, I don't know what to believe. He says this, you say that. I don't know what to believe.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's very triggering too, from the perspective of 29 years in Scientology being told, believe this. Then, it's like the fish who's been in the fishbowl for 27 years and now is put in the ocean. It's a completely different scenario, context, and you're no longer in an environment that has constraints of what you can or can't believe. So the overwhelm of information influx it's absolutely completely normal adjustment.
And it comes with
now
certainty.
more than ever with social media and the pervasiveness of the ubiquity of social media and the fact that absolutely anybody can put absolutely anything out there.
And they deliver it with such certainty.
Yes.
That little goldfish in the oceans thinking that shark sure has a lot of certainty.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
And it turned out to be the part of the solution really was the same as it had been in order to get her to blow, which was don't approach her with certainty. This is what you should really believe. Instead, ask questions. It was well, do you really believe this? Or do you really, does this make sense? Or does that make sense?
Yes.
So all these news organizations, they've all been conspiring for all this time. This one's 150 years old. Does that mean they've been conspiring with all the other ones for their entire, they've been conspiring for that long? And if so, why does, if there are leaks, or that means nobody leaks, right? If they're all conspiring successfully. Anyway, but it is just the idea of asking questions, saying, well, this doesn't make sense to me. Can you explain it to me?
Yes, right.
How do you make sense of this? Because I can't.
Yep.
If somebody says to you, the media isn't, if somebody says to you, the media isn't covering this, they want you to not believe it. Well, guess what? I Google it, and in 1 minute I find the media is covering that. And then, so why were you just told that the media isn't? Why does this person want you to believe that the media isn't covering it?
Yeah.
Because you can see right here in front of you that it is.
Yep. Makes sense. Awesome. John, are you good if we run through some questions before we wrap up? Your perspective has been so valuable, and has, I think, I at least from where I sit, provided such great insight into what this whole process was like. And again, we're so grateful that I have
definitely
had the collaboration.
Same for me. And the biggest thing take away for me is I've learned that I need to add another level to my patience.
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm not a patient person. I get bent out of shape over unbelievably stupid things, but the stakes on this are too high.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Awesome. Well, here, we'll run through some questions and comments here. Lupita says, that had to be scary, John, not hearing from Katherine. We probably already covered that, but any other comments, John?
A wave of dread is what that was. Just feeling the whole thing. Maybe that was just the whole thing falling out from under us as a possibility.
Yes, completely. And then Katherine added, this is in relation to the SIM card and that period of going dark. She said, didn't touch either of them, the iPod or the phone, I think it was, until I got to the OSU campus. Yep. And then Katherine also said, Ashley, the volunteer, picked me up at the OSU campus and took me to the apartments to grab my stuff. Yes, that's right. I remember that. So again, it was very like, oh, get somebody there, pick her up, and, just trying to minimize the logistics that Katherine had to deal with in that moment was interesting.
Yes. Yes, it was.
Just another reminder on that too, for those who haven't watched the video of her escape, it's worth watching to get Catherine's whole viewpoint of the whole thing too. It's fascinating. I was riveted through the whole thing.
Yes, for sure. AGT Mom says, who is the greater enemy of escaping? Is it Scientology or is it the member themselves who may be second guessing their decision? Interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
That is an interesting viewpoint because the conditioning, depending on how long you've been in, how deeply you've been in, there's a lot of conditioning, like programming that comes along in your mind that prevents you from escaping, even if no other Scientologist says anything about you leaving or anything. That conditioning, but that conditioning is put there by Scientology. So
I was going to say, maybe this is a cop-out. I was just going to say, well, they're the same thing to me.
It is, because the conditioning is put there by Scientology.
Their decision. Right. That's not the person who went in there.
That's true.
That's the person that's inside.
And that is the case. Yeah.
Yep. For sure. That's a really good point. Catherine says, I'm sure they confiscated all devices and searched everyone's apartment in Columbus. Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense. And again, Catherine says, especially devices other than phones, since Catherine used an iPod. Yep. There we go. Becky, Big Brother fan, says Scientology are always 15 years behind regarding updating technology. Ironic for an organization so focused on their life-changing, quote-unquote, tech. Yeah, that's a good point, too. For sure. Okay, let's see here.
You have to get into this technology. It could change your life.
Right? We have the technology to clear the planet and the universe. Okay, here we go. Zoe B says, learning how to think critically for oneself after being in a cult has to be uniquely challenging, partly because there's so much daily living to learn and catch up on.
That's a very good point.
Very good point.
It does take a bit to kind of get into that critical thinking after.
And one way that is undermined by people who think they think critically and actually don't is the people who just say reality is absolutely anything. There's no fixed reality on anything. Everything is subject to opinion. And so which I do understand the idea of what's true for you is true.
Yeah, Scientology says what's true for you is what's true for you, but that is entirely not the case, because what's true for you is what Scientology says is true.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, spiritually, what's true for you is true. And when things are a matter of opinion, what's true for you is true. But for instance, again, like the media isn't covering this. Well, you're watching. I should look at this. You can see the media covering this. That's true.
Yeah.
That's
there you
universally true and demonstrably true.
Right. Yep. Okay. A few last questions here, John, and then we will let you get back to your Sunday. Witness Multi-Chick says, question, John and Catherine, how did you deal with the problem of fair game after Catherine left?
I actually didn't have to deal with it myself.
Yeah, other than the phone calls that we already talked about.
One phone call that I saw from Columbus and then didn't answer because it was from Columbus, but I was not subject to that, and Catherine was not really subject to that. We were not harassed.
Yeah, I will say that I
probably
know
has more to say about that than we would, really.
Yeah, and I will say that I know Catherine was certainly concerned about that, especially in the first day or so. Like the first night she stayed at a hotel, and then after that, but because she didn't know how to drive or have any vehicle, and it was a few miles from our house, we just said, hey, would you feel better just staying in our guest room so you're around people? And because you never that transition from such a very, very tightly controlled environment to now, oh, the world is my oyster, but yet that also prevents a level of seeming chaos and confusion until you adjust to it, is
It's like a cat likes to stuff itself into a little box or whatever, a really small space, partially, I think, because it wants to feel secure and nothing can get it like that. But then suddenly the cat is out in an open field.
Yes.
And then, even though it may be in no danger, it's probably going to feel pretty anxious.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Well, we had this similar, not to that degree, but when we got out of Scientology, there was that little bit of paranoia for a while until it settled down. As far as fair game, though, I haven't really noticed. I think there's a lot less going on now because they're so short-staffed. There are probably some individuals who get more of it, but they're more of the focus, like Mark and Claire. But even though Willie and I've been speaking out, or me, especially, that I haven't seen anything to that effect. They still have hate pages on us, but they haven't updated them. So I need to contact them and give them some new. No, I'm kidding.
Well, that's the other thing is that I wasn't part of an organization that undermines what they're doing. And I was just working on one particular person. And it's not like I had been out there putting up demonstrations or something. And part of the reason that Claire does not enjoy that luxury is because she's the head of one of these organizations, or one of these organizations. There aren't really that many, I guess. There's just this one, really. But Katherine had talked many times about how, well, if I had gone around and spoken out and started my own YouTube channel about the treachery and the horrors of Scientology, then maybe that might have been different, but that's not what she was doing at the time.
Even then, I've done over 40 videos on my YouTube channel. Nothing. No. We used to get cease and desist letters from their attorneys. We used to get PIs following us, but I haven't seen anything for years. And even during the time when I was doing a lot of those videos on my new YouTube channel, nothing. So
yep, they're definitely shrinking.
Yeah, they are shrinking.
The fewer of them there are, the less they'll have the resources to do that.
Definitely.
And the less they have the resources to do that, the fewer of them there will be, and so on and so on. Hopefully until zero.
There you go. Yes. All right, couple last ones here. Dr. X, having the freedom to do whatever you want, eating good food, enjoying the company of awesome people and fur babies, and of course, naps means life is going well. Yes, 100%. Indeed. 100%. Okay, and then YouTube watcher question, John, did you have any training for working with people in high control groups or domestic violence situations? As you detail, it is a very delicate situation and you handled it very well.
Thank you. No formal training. I can say that I've had a lot of different jobs over the decades, and some of those were where I had to deal indirectly with people. It was very clear that they were in domestic violence situations. But I actually, and not in high control groups, but I actually have to cite my theatrical training as one of the things that I feel like was the way I feel like I applied it was really helpful. And if you're a theater practitioner, whether you're a director, you're an actor or a playwright or any of those, one of the most important classes that anybody in any part of that discipline will have to take is script analysis. But the point is that you're always trying to figure out what somebody's motivation is. And if you are, when you're asking questions, it was of enormous benefit to me to be able to apply that to her and to what the Sea Org was doing and what the foundation would do. Like, why would they do this? What would be, and I think it's important to say, what is their motivation rather than just why?
That's brilliant right there. When you say that, the first thing I think of is someone would have asked me that. what was your motivation to get into Scientology in the first place? And if I would have answered that fully, and then they just said, okay, well, did you get any of that? Just the question of what the original motivation, that would have been a brilliant question to ask.
Well, I just feel like it's the most relevant thing. It's one of the most relevant things you can ask in so many parts of life.
Yeah.
What causes this person to do that? And the answer is not because they're a dick, something like that. That's a judgment. And so that's why I differentiate between saying, why do they do this? And what is the motivation? Because if somebody says, well, why did this person slap you in the face? Because they're a jerk. Okay, well, what makes them a jerk? Because they're a dick. Okay, that doesn't tell me anything. That tells me they must have had some reason that they believe it was a good idea for them to slap you in the face. They feel there's something. They're not going to say they're a dick. They're not going to say they're a jerk. They're just going to say, because the person deserved it, because that person disrespected me, and we don't have to agree with the reason. We don't have to agree with it, but we have to know what it is.
Right.
And I feel like that was probably the most important thing, because there are lots of people who've gone through, who have theatrical training, but I feel like that's the best way I've been able to apply it was to this.
Nice. Bravo. Well said.
I think.
And before we wrap up, I would like to say we have an amazing surprise coming from you, John. I'm not going to spill the beans on any of that just yet, but for anyone tuning in here, please do hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification, and more to come from John. Right, John?
Right.
Yep.
No, but
all
seriously,
on the wink wink.
No, he's playing. There's definitely more coming. So we appreciate you, John. Thank you again for sharing your invaluable perspective. It's super helpful. Any last words from John, you or Phil?
I just want to say thank you, John. This has been awesome. It's been enlightening for me as well, just from getting your perspective on all of this.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you, all of you. I really want to help as much as I can, and thank you for the opportunity. I hope it is helpful.
Very definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. On that note, until next time, thank you both. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye now.
Take care.
Please help us to get to 10,000 subscribers.
And don't forget to push the notification bell to be alerted when new content is available.
For more information about how you can apply for help
or to become a volunteer,
visit us at theaftermathfoundation.org.
Thank you for watching.